All right, welcome on in everyone to First CSP for another edition of the Sunday Special. In this case, we're going to be doing an update video for our First CSP episode 272 on Suwannee River area. In that episode, we were able to show you the T1 and a few production runs of the T3, but what we did not have in our collection at the time is the TA2. The TA2 does closely resemble the T1, and so we did want to try and add one of those to our collection and bring it to you, and we are fortunate to be able to do so today, as well as a little bit of the history behind the second patch produced attributed to the Council for Suwannee River 664 out of Florida. So the second CSP has been listed in the guide as being produced by the Order of the Arrow, and the story goes that the Suwannee Lodge 239 produced a reissue of the first CSP as a fundraiser. Now, the original collecting guides estimate that 100 of the first CSP T1 were made, and then individuals have confirmed that 200 of the Suwannee TA2 were made in approximately 1978. They were selling that as a fundraiser, and on the back they had stamped that it was a fundraiser for the lodge. However, what they found soon after was that individuals were able to clean off the stamp and were trying to pass off the TA2 as T1s, which were more valuable at the time. So what they ended up doing was getting indelible ink and writing repo on the back of the TA2s. Now, I have to remember this is back in the 70s and early 80s. We didn't have the advent of the internet. We didn't really have the advent of digital photography. So it was probably pretty easy to pass off a TA2 as a T1. We're going to look at them side by side today. You're going to see that there are a number of distinctions that with imagery would be able to tell the difference of today, but that wasn't something that was available at the time, and so it was a real issue. All right, first up on the patch table, I actually have the TA2, and then I'll put a T1 up and we can look together. But I was able to actually go back through some of my personal collecting from when I was a scout in the 90s. I was able to find this 1996 NOAC flap from the lodge. We're not really lodge flap collectors, but I was happy to be able to find this one. It's kind of cool. This is the lodge that then produced the patch below. Their lodge totem is a Seminole Indian, as they are from the North Florida area. So I thought that was pretty cool. This one happens to be, I think, their S34 flap from NOAC in 1996. Let's bring the CSP center stage. This is the TA2. If we flip it over, it is a gauze cloth back. We can see that this is one of those that has repo written in indelible ink on the left side. I do have an image I'm going to be able to put on our X account where someone from the local area and the Historical Society, he said they do have the stamp still that they used on the back in their museum, and he has an image comparing one written with repo in indelible ink as well as one that still has intact the stamp on the back. And looking at that stamp, it reminds me very much of like the D2 stamp on the Del Mar Vaugh patches, and I can imagine that it probably did not take much to get that stamp ink off. Just that ink, whatever it was at the time, was, you know, not super well adhering to the fabric or whatever, because most of the times when you find those Del Mar Vaughs with the D2s, the D2 is almost wiped all the way off. We're very fortunate that in our Del Mar Vaugh episode we happen to have one that's really clean still with the D2 stamp, but a lot of times you can find those gone. So, you know, heat, moisture, time, whatever, that ink just didn't hold up. This indelible ink for repo, though, certainly does. So let's get a T1 up here as well and talk about the distinctions if you were trying to look for identification between an authentic T1 and these TA2s from the OA Lodge. One of the first things you're going to note is the banner. I think it's the most distinct comparison between the two. Certainly we get a more gold color on the banner. This is going to be more yellow down here, but this banner is just horizontally sewn, whereas the TA2 has a stitched border that is vertical on both top and bottom. And again, back in the late 70s, early 80s, if you didn't have imagery to show you, these look very, very similar. You're going to find the TA2 is slightly shorter by 5 millimeters, but again, even that, you maybe wouldn't notice, back in the day. Now, obviously, again, when we can put them side by side, these are not the same patch, but I could certainly see it being passed off as one. We're going to see the color within the banner here as it wraps back around. That is not present again in the TA2. Another one of the things that stands out more to me, I find that the way these were finished on the T1s, they're almost always come to a little bit of a point, whereas I'm seeing more of these TA2s to just be kind of flattish, roundish towards the bottom. It's a minor distinction, but another thing to look for. The back is actually the most telling because they use a very open gauze backing on the TA2, and it is a super tight weave gauze backing on all of these T1s as well. So there's a number of things you can look for once you know to look for them, but they are very, very similar. They're both odd shaped, not standard CSP shapes. And I could certainly see someone that doesn't know as much being passed off, especially if you had one that was originally stamped. Because what I assume happened was the lodge found out that people were taking the stamp off and trying to pass it off. So any of the remaining stock has really got these repo written with indelible ink, but the ones that were already out. So there is probably a handful that maybe do not have repo, but are still those TA2s and could potentially be passed off as T1s. So again, really excited to be able to bring you this Sunday special update comparing the T1 to the TA2 for Suwannee River, documenting a little bit of the history behind this patch and what happened with it. I hope you guys have enjoyed the story as well. Again, our X account is linked in the description of every video, and I will get an image put up on our X account that was sent to me that does have a picture of the original stamp that these TA2s came with intact, so you can see what that looks like, and it's actually flipped over against one of these that says repo as well, so you can see them kind of compared side by side on our X account. Anytime we get additional picture type graphic information that users send into us to add to the stories for these CSPs, we always post it on X. We don't have a lot of posts on X, but if there's any additional type information like that, that's the easiest way for us to allow all of the viewers to enjoy that amazing material. So that's always linked in our description below as well. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Hopefully you found this update to be helpful and informative. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Remember, we've got new First CSP episodes out every single day. We hope to see you back here for tomorrow's, but until then, thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.